It is a great win for Golden State. They're now secure in the number 6 spot by 1 game over the LA Clippers as they beat an undermanned San Antonio squad 148-106. But if you look at it from a Warrior viewpoint, just the level of play that they showed tonight is a very good sign. Even the win in New Orleans the other night was a win, but it wasn't a great game for Golden State tonight. They put together a really good contest and come away with the victory tonight.
Yeah, the final score, Warriors 148, Spurs 106. A dominant start-to-finish win for the Golden State Warriors, who are now 12 games over 500 at 43-31. And as you just heard Tim Roy say, now a full game up on the Clippers for 6th in the Western Conference. And while it isn't a done deal just yet, Minnesota is about to win at home against the Detroit Pistons, which means the Clippers will fall all the way to 8, and Minnesota will jump back up to 7th. The Warriors will be in 6th. They'll be a half game ahead of Minnesota, a full game ahead of the Clippers. But right now, Minnesota, with a little more than 2 minutes to go in Minneapolis, they lead the Pistons, who are without Cade Cunningham, by 20. So that will be a Minnesota win. Wasn't the best day as possible for the Warriors, but a still pretty good day because the Warriors win and the Clippers lose, and the Warriors are back to 6th in the Western Conference standings. Welcome in. It's Warriors Wrap-Up here on 95.7 The Game. Mark Randy with you. This was the kind of win the Warriors needed. At this stage of the season, the Warriors have now played 74 games. There's 8 games left, and every game matters. What matters more than anything else is just getting a win. New Orleans was valuable, and it was a great game because it was a win. Was it ugly? Yeah, it was pretty ugly. Was it the Warriors, not the Warriors' best effort and best performance? Yes, no doubt. They got down 14-2. They were trailing after 1. They were trailing at half. Does not matter. You just need wins by any means necessary. It could be the prettiest win in the history of basketball. It could be the ugliest win in the history of basketball. For the Warriors, the win is all that they need right now. But if we can pick and choose and we can say, yeah, well, they got this kind of win versus that kind of win, the Warriors needed this kind of win tonight. They win by 42 points. They shoot the cover off the ball. A number of key guys maybe got over their shooting slumps, and now they go into a really key stretch of their season against some quality basketball teams. Memphis on Tuesday, the Lakers on Thursday, both of those on the road to close out this 6-game road trip. Then a back-to-back after that Lakers game at home against Denver, then Houston, then Phoenix. Those are a lot of really quality teams on the docket for the Warriors, and this win tonight ensures that they're at least beginning that stretch feeling pretty darn good about themselves after they were pretty down in the dumps, given what happened the beginning of this road trip. You get dominated by Atlanta. You get blown out by Miami. You have a bad start against New Orleans. You recover. You win that game versus the Pelicans. And then you come out and you never trail versus the Spurs. And you win 148-106. A season high 148 points. 13 Warriors played in this game. All 13 scored. 9 of those 13, including Kevon Looney, made a three-pointer. And now with the Clippers' loss earlier today in Cleveland, you are now a full game ahead of the Clippers. You will, though, in about 60 seconds, be just a half game ahead of Minnesota, as Minnesota is about to win in Minneapolis today. You led by as many as 47 points, and you never trailed. You won this game wire to wire, and there really was never a doubt. You got off to a fantastic start, and given what has happened on this road trip of late, that was absolutely needed. But again, welcome into Warriors Wrap-Up. Mark Garandy with you on this Sunday. Plenty of time for your calls and your text. Shoot me a text. Give me a call at 888-957-9570. This was the kind of win the Warriors needed. I asked the same thing after the New Orleans game. Did that win ease any of your concerns, Warrior fans, or did it just raise more? Because, again, a win is a win is a win, and all this team cares about is wins. But there was still a lot of shooting struggles. There was the slow start. There was playing down to your competition. All those things were still there. So it didn't really answer any of the questions or concerns you had about this Warrior team. What about tonight? Did tonight change your mind? Did tonight ease any of your concerns, Warrior fans? Let me know. 888-957-9570. Again, that's both the number to call and to text if you want to join the conversation over the phone lines or on our text line. Plus, I've got our YouTube chat up as well, youtube.com/957thegame. Everything we do on YouTube, powered by First NorCal Credit Union, and I'm coming to you live from our Laughing Monk studios. A pleasure having Laughing Monk involved with us here at 95.7 The Game. I see Empire, I see San Jose Jazz fan, I see Comatose, I see Joseph, I see Dennis, I see Vince, all on our YouTube chat. I see the 448, the 510, the 415, another 415, another 510, another 510 chiming in. Appreciate all you guys for tuning in. We'll get to all your comments and your texts and your calls throughout the evening here on Warriors Wrap Up. The only negative to come out of this basketball game, and it's a wait and see to determine how much of a negative it is, and we're going to hear from Coach Kerr coming up, and we do have the full Kerr. We also do have just this little injury update on Jonathan Kaminga that I'll play. I have it over here, Cam. I'll play this from Steve Kerr. We'll hear the full Steve Kerr coming up in just a little bit, but let's hear Steve Kerr on Jonathan Kaminga, because the only negative for this one for the Warriors is Jonathan Kaminga left this game in the first half. He was walking gingerly to the tunnel into the locker room after he fell hard on his backside after attacking the basket with about 7 minutes to go in the second quarter. And I think a lot of us thought it was a similar injury to what Steph just went through, landing on his tailbone area. But the way that he fell, his feet, his legs kind of braced his fall. He still ended up falling on his backside, but it was his feet that landed first. And he was ruled out at halftime with right ankle soreness. And what is concerning about that is the right ankle is what caused him to miss 31 games earlier this year. So it's definitely concerning considering it's the same ankle, and it was something that took a lot longer than expected to recover and for Kaminga to return. Today was just his 9th game back after he missed those 31 games. But here is Steve Kerr, really quick, an update or his initial thoughts on Jonathan Kaminga.
Yeah, I saw him at halftime and checked in on him. Such a bummer, just coming back, finding his rhythm, playing well. So hopefully it's nothing too serious.
Okay, so not much of an update there from Steve Kerr, hoping it's nothing too serious, but the fact that he doesn't have anything definitive right now at least suggests that it isn't something that you would consider season-ending. And you look at how he came down. The ankle wasn't the first thing that stood out to me. Again, I thought it was more of a tailbone thing, a pelvic contusion, which was what Steph had. It looked like that was where most of the force came from, but ankles can be fickle sometimes. So we'll keep our fingers crossed for Jonathan Kaminga. But that was a text that I saw from the 510. The 510 says, if Kaminga doesn't miss more time, I'm optimistic. We will keep you updated when we have any more information on Jonathan Kaminga. It doesn't seem like the Warriors are going to be giving anything out today. We'll probably get a little bit more perhaps tomorrow, and whenever we get that information, we'll, of course, keep you updated on 95.7 The Game. But that is the only negative from this game today. The Warriors had so many positive things go their way in this one. And again, I think what's valuable for the Warriors right now in a veteran team like them, I don't think they necessarily care all that much about style points or the way in which they win, right? This is a team that's won 4 championships, and I say this is a team, I mean the core of Steph and Draymond, and Looney's been a part of it, and of course Steve Kerr, and a couple of other pieces that were here in 2022. Like there's a group here that can deal with the ups and downs and the roller coaster ride of a regular season and eking out a win when you're not playing your best, knowing that when the time comes to play your best that you can kind of turn it on. At least that's the way I think the mindset of this team works. But you can't deny that this road trip has kind of left them down in the dumps. And they needed a performance where a number of people began to shoot the ball well, and to where they can go into future matchups feeling a little bit more confident when they're open along the three-point line. Let me read some numbers to you that I think give you an idea of just how badly the Warriors need a shooting night like this. Last 7 games for the Warriors, and I have more specific numbers, but let's focus first here on the last 7 for the Warriors. They had averaged 105 points per game in their last 7. Tonight, they scored 148. Field goal percentage in the last 7. They had shot essentially 43% from the field, 42.8 to be exact. Tonight, they shoot 57.7. They were 56 for 97 from the field. Three-point line, they were 32% in their previous 7 games. Tonight, 47.7%. They were 21 for 44 from downtown. And their offensive rating, 106 in their previous 7 games, 136.6 tonight. So gigantic differences in the way the Warriors offense performed today versus how they have in their last 7 games over the last couple of weeks. Specifically on this road trip and focusing in on the last 2 games before tonight, in Miami, they go 33 for 83 from the field. That's 39.8% from the field. They make just 23% of their threes. Against New Orleans, 41% from the field. They make just 23% of their threes. And then tonight, again, a shade under 58% from the field, and they go 21 of 44 from deep, 47.7% from downtown. Again, 13 Warriors played. All 13 Warriors made at least 1 field goal, and all 13 players that got through this game healthy, right? So the only exception there is Jonathan Kaminga. All other players made at least 2 field goals in this basketball game. All others. So that means 12 of the 13 Warriors that played in this one tonight made at least 2 field goals. 9 Warriors made a three-pointer. Even Kevon Looney made a 3, his first of the season and 11th of his career. And I think what is important for the Warriors, and why I think just the vibe and seeing some shots go through and seeing some threes fall, why I think that's so important, is because the Warriors, for the most part, despite the lackluster offense, had been getting very similar shots than they got tonight. Now, once you get up by 40 in the second half, then, you kind of throw everything to the wind and take it all with a grain of salt at that point. But for the first half of this basketball game, the shots the Warriors were generating, for the most part, had been the same shots they had been generating the last handful of games, and specifically when Steph has been in. The difference tonight, for whatever reason, is they went in. They made them. Maybe you point to where they've been on the road in Atlanta, in Miami, in New Orleans, and you point to the nightlife, and you look at tonight in San Antonio, and last night the team probably wasn't out that late celebrating and enjoying the nightlife of San Antonio, not known for its late night culture. Maybe that's what you think, but whatever the reason, the shots went in tonight. I don't think there's a gigantic disparity in shot quality created by the Warriors tonight versus the rest of this road trip. I think tonight they just went in. So seeing the Warriors for the first time in a bit take advantage of all those created shots, of all those quality shots created, and seeing them go in, that is huge for the Warriors, because I think they have decided, and considering what they have in terms of scoring down low, probably, a jump shooting team for the most part, taking a lot of threes. They took 44 today. San Antonio ended up taking 42, and that's kind of what the NBA has become. But you look at the last couple of games, they put up 55 threes versus New Orleans, despite only shooting 13 or only making 13. Considering what the Warriors have in terms of consistent scorers in the paint, it's best for them to probably shoot a lot of threes. It looks really ugly when their three-point shooters are having off nights like they have had of late. But on a night like tonight, when almost everybody is shooting the ball well, they look darn near unbeatable. I mean, Podziemski, 7 for 9 from downtown. Moses Moody, 3 for 6. Buddy Hield, 3 for 6. Steph Curry only got up 4 threes and only 10 field goal attempts. They still scored a season-high 148. Steph was 2 for 4. Draymond was 2 for 4. Butler made 1. He was 1 for 2. Looney was 1 for 1 from downtown in this one. Pat Spencer made 1. Quentin Post made 1. He was only 1 for 6, got a lot of looks and had a couple of good looks, but couldn't only make the 1. I told you, take the over 1.5 made threes for Post today. The attempts were there, just couldn't get that other one to go down. But when the Warriors shoot like they, and it doesn't even have to be to this level, when they shoot a decent percentage from deep, they're very, very, very hard to beat. The bet the Warriors have been making, and they've been making it all season, and especially since Jimmy Butler was acquired, they feel very confident about their ability to create good looks. Their bet is they're going to make them at a certain point. Tonight they made them. In New Orleans they didn't make them, but that's a bad enough New Orleans team that the Warriors could still win despite not shooting the ball well. They didn't hit them in Miami. They did not hit them as much in Atlanta, and they lose those games as a result. But their bet is you continue to consistently create good shots. They will fall at a decent clip, and as a result, you will win. At least you'll be in position to win a lot of your basketball games. That is the bet the Warriors are making. It's the bet they have made for a while, and it's the bet they're going to make for the rest of the regular season. 8 games left in the regular season, and it's the bet they're going to make in the postseason. It's why the play-in tournament scares me so much, because you put this Warrior team in a one-game do-or-die situation, and there's a shot that they could win by 50, like tonight. If their shots fall, there's a shot they could lose to anybody, and they could lose by 20 or more to anybody, because if their shots don't fall, there's not much else that they can do. Now, when your shots fall, it opens up everything else. And did you notice how much the Warriors dominated the paint tonight? 64-44 was the points in the paint advantage for the Warriors in this one. On a game in which you made 21 threes, you also scored 64 points in the paint. 64 points in the paint and 21 from deep. So that's 63 points from downtown and 64 points in the paint. Talk about balance. That is pretty good balance for the Warriors on offense. When they are shooting and hitting from downtown, it opens up everything else down low, because suddenly defenses have to respect it. When for the most part of late, the Warriors haven't been making their threes. In fact, they've been daring players like Kaminga and Draymond and Jimmy Butler. Less so Moody and Podziemski, but still they're not terribly concerned about those guys. At least they haven't been of late. And when that happens and your threes aren't falling, it becomes 10 times more difficult to score down low, because opponents are just packing the paint and they're perfectly content with you shooting threes. But you open up the first quarter the way you did, you score 44 points in the first. Guess what? San Antonio, multiple timeouts in that first quarter, and coming out of the second quarter, they're going to say, all right, we have to defend the three-point line now. Otherwise, we have no chance. And then everything else opens up down low. And that's where the beauty of this Warriors offense comes in. When you are hitting from outside, then you can get inside. And that's what the Warriors did tonight. All right, 888-957-9570 is the number to call. It is also our text line. And I've got my eyes on our YouTube chat, powered by First NorCal Credit Union. I want to remind you, you're listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ FM in HD1 San Francisco. an Odyssey sports station, always live on the free Odyssey app, and now coming to you live from the Laughing Monk Studios. I think in addition to just the shooting numbers, actually, you know what, before I get to that, I did want to confirm officially that Minnesota has won. So Minnesota, they have beaten Detroit. Detroit playing without Cade Cunningham, still a tough team to go up against. But Minnesota has won. Final score there, 123-104. There was some craziness going on in that basketball game. 5 players and 2 coaches were ejected after a fight broke out in the second quarter of Minnesota versus Detroit earlier today. Detroit head coach J.B. Bickerstaff got ejected. Center Isaiah Stewart, forward Ron Holland II, and guard Marcus Sasser all were ejected. Minnesota lost Naz Reid and Dante DiVincenzo, along with assistant coach Pablo Prigioni. It happened late in the first half. Pistons were up for the majority of the first half of this game, and then the T-Wolves had an awesome third quarter, and they ultimately win the game by nearly 20 points. But Isaiah Stewart had received a technical foul for shoving Dante DiVincenzo after the whistle. And then moments after that, Ron Holland was called for a foul as he slapped the ball away out of Naz Reid's hands near the baseline. The two must have said something to each other, because then Dante DiVincenzo came racing in, grabbed Holland's jersey, and then suddenly all 10 players on the court and multiple coaches and trainers were part of the scrum. And again, ultimately 5 players, 2 coaches ejected. And ultimately, the T-Wolves go on to win that game. So craziness happening in Minnesota tonight. But in terms of how the Warriors feel, not the result they wanted. Again, the T-Wolves beat the Pistons 123-104. The Warriors did get a good result earlier today in Cleveland when the Cavs knocked off the Clippers 127-122. Pair that along with a Minnesota win and a Warrior win, and the Western Conference standings now look like this. The Warriors are back to the 6th seed at 43-31. The T-Wolves, with their win and the Clippers loss, are now the 7 at 43-32. So they've played one more game than the Warriors, and they have one more loss. So if the Warriors just win out, Minnesota cannot possibly catch them. There's nothing they can do. The Warriors, in fact, can actually lose once more. They could go 7-1 in their final 8, and Minnesota will not be able to catch them. The Clippers can, however, but Minnesota has one more loss, and the Warriors have the tiebreaker. So if the Warriors and the T-Wolves both finish with, say, 32 losses, if Minnesota wins out and the Warriors go 7-1, the Warriors will finish ahead of the T-Wolves because the Warriors have the tiebreaker there. The Clippers are 42-32. They've played the same number of games as the Warriors, have one fewer win and one more loss. So they are a full game behind the Warriors, but they have the tiebreaker over the Warriors. So if the Clippers and Warriors finish tied, it will be the Clippers that win the tiebreaker with the Warriors. And by the way, in the event of a 3-way tie, which is probably unlikely, but is definitely possible, the Warriors would not win that tiebreaker. If there are 3 teams tied for the 6th, the Warriors would not win that, and they would be in the play-in tournament. Memphis also factors in here now because they're only 4-6 in their last 10 and have lost 2 in a row. The Warriors are only a game behind Memphis for the 5 seed. Memphis is 44-30, so the teams have played the same amount of games. Both the Grizzlies and the Warriors have 8 games left, and the Warriors have a game against Memphis coming up very shortly. In fact, it's their next game. Warriors are in Memphis on Tuesday, and if the Warriors win that game, the Warriors would also get the tiebreaker on the Memphis Grizzlies. The schedule for Memphis, though, is interesting because they play tomorrow. The Grizzlies have a back-to-back, and tomorrow is Boston. The Boston Celtics take on Memphis tomorrow in Memphis, and then the Warriors are there and playing the next night. So the Warriors have the advantage there in that regard because Memphis will be on a back-to-back. Now they're going to be riding the emotional high of their coach and a couple of assistant coaches being fired. Maybe it's an emotional high, maybe it's an emotional low. I think generally it's an emotional high, at least to begin, in the immediate response to a decision like that. But tough for Memphis, a back-to-back of Boston and then the Warriors. There's a real chance that if the Grizzlies lose to the Celtics, which they are favored to do, that game is tomorrow at 4:30 on TNT, and then if the Warriors go into Memphis and win on Tuesday, the Warriors will pass the Grizzlies and could be the 5 seed after Tuesday's game in Memphis. That would be phenomenal news for the Warriors. I don't know necessarily about the matchup that they would prefer in the first round, but the most amount of distance you can put between yourselves and the play-in tournament, that is the way to go. Even if it means potentially a first-round matchup against LeBron and the Lakers, I am willing to do that if it means I'm guaranteeing myself out of the play-in tournament. So just something to keep an eye on as the season progresses. If you want to look even further, you can also say, well, the Warriors are now only 2 games behind the Lakers. The Lakers are currently the 4, but the Lakers do have the tiebreaker, so the Warriors have to be 3 games better than the Lakers over their final 8. Now, there is a head-to-head game coming up. Even if the Warriors win that, the Lakers still have the tiebreaker, but that's just a way to easily gain a game on them. But let's just pretend over the last 8, let's just say the Warriors go undefeated, right? They win as many games as possible. They go 8-0, and they finish with 51 wins. The Lakers can't get to 51 wins. They're currently at 45, so they would have to go 5-3 in their last 8. That's possible, but expecting the Lakers to lose 3 games in their final 8 while you win out seems unlikely. I would scratch off catching the Lakers as possible. Memphis is certainly possible, but you could also be as low as 8. Realistically, the Warriors' potential spots in the Western Conference are 5 through 8. The 5 seed, the 6 seed, the 7th seed, and the 8th seed. I would say the 6 is probably the most likely. The 7th, probably the second most likely. And then the 5th and the 8th might be relatively close in terms of likeliness that happens. But it all depends the way Memphis plays. And you could really take a major step toward that with a win on Tuesday in Memphis, because you would then own the tiebreaker. And, of course, you would then pick up an entire game on Memphis in just one night. But we can talk a little bit more about that later on here on Warriors Wrap-Up. You can join the conversation yourself at 888-957-9570. The 239 chiming in on what we were just talking about. Warriors have the Lakers and Grizzlies on notice. Huge week, playing both to take the 4th seed and home court if they handle their business against both. It's certainly possible, but again, 239, and appreciate you chiming in. I think even if the Warriors were to beat the Lakers head-to-head, I don't think the Warriors are going to be able to catch the Lakers. I still think what the Warriors should be hoping for is being the 6th seed and having the Denver Nuggets catch the Rockets. And I think of the realistic first-round matchups, Houston is the best for the Warriors. I'd rather play Houston over the Lakers. I'd rather play Houston over the Nuggets. And if you're the 6th, you would need the Nuggets to make up a game and a half on Houston to get that done. Not saying it's likely, but that's the likeliest scenario. If the Warriors were to take on Houston would fall to the 3. The Warriors would be the 6, and that would, I think, be a dream matchup for the Warriors. Then you would then play the winner of 2 versus 7, which might be Denver or whoever. And I think even Denver is a better matchup for the Warriors than the Lakers are. But I think there's a couple people out there who might disagree with me there. Anyway, I think climbing to the 4 is unlikely. The 5, I think, is the high point for the Warriors. The 8 is the low point. They will be one of those 4 seeds. The 5, the 6, the 7, or the 8. I would be shocked if they're anything other than, again, 5, 6, 7, or 8. All right, 888-957-9570. We'll take a break here coming up in just a second on Warriors Wrap-Up. But I did want to say, I think for the Warriors, it was good for a number of individual players to have the kind of shooting performance that they did. I mean, take Brandon Podziemski, for example. Podziemski, 27 points, 9 of 14 from the field. He was 7 of 9 from downtown, had 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and a steal. He was amazing in this game tonight. He was 2 off of his career high of 29 points. He set a new career high in made threes. He had made 5 in his career, and in fact, he set that number earlier on this road trip in Atlanta. Made 7 tonight, 7 of 9 from downtown. Talk about incredible efficiency. He was 3 for 13 from deep in his previous 2 games. Podziemski was. So good to see some balls from downtown go through the rim for him tonight. In the third quarter alone, 14 points, 5 of 6 from the field, 4 of 4 from downtown. And if you were watching along on NBC Sports Bay Area, you probably saw the sunburn he has from some time spent at the beach in Miami. Maybe he needs to get sunburnt a little more often because he could not miss tonight. Again, 27 points, 9 of 14 from the field, 7 of 9 from downtown. He was amazing. Moses Moody was also great. How about this? Moody in his previous 6 games. We're talking about like 2 weeks worth of games now. Moody 6 for 32 from downtown. That is about 18.7%. Less than 19% from deep. Tonight, 20 points, 7 of 11 from the field, 3 of 6 from deep, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, and a block. In the third quarter only, just like Podziemski, he also went off. Podziemski had 14 in the third. Moody had 13. Moody was 5 of 7 from the field, 3 of 4 from downtown. In the third quarter alone, those two really carried the Warriors in the third quarter, took what was a big lead at halftime. It was 68-44. They led by 24 points at half. They ultimately led at one point by 39 points in the third quarter. It was because of Podziemski and Moody and the way they shot the ball in that third quarter. Okay, we're going to take a break here on Warriors Wrap-Up. When we come back, we got time for your calls, your texts, and your texts on YouTube as well. Plus, we will hear from Coach Steve Kerr, who has addressed the media post-game in San Antonio. All that and more coming up as we continue. It's Mark Randy with you on Warriors Wrap-Up. The Dubs knock off the Spurs 43-31, 148-106 to improve to 43-31. A much-needed win, and they gain some ground in a packed Western Conference playoff picture. I'll tell you about that and more when we come back. It's Mark Randy with you right here on 95.7 The Game.
Looking for lifelong financial guidance? Look no further.
Back to post. Pump fake. Dribbles in. Back to Podziemski. Podziemski for a three. It's up and good. Brandon Podziemski with another three. He had 4 in the third. I believe that's a new career high for him for threes in a game, which would be 7.
Now back to Warriors Wrap Up on 95.7 The Game.
Indeed, that was a new career high. Tim Roy on top of it, as always. Brandon Podziemski made 7 threes today. He made, in the third quarter alone, 4 of them. He was a perfect 4 for 4 from downtown in this one in the third quarter, but 7 of 9 from deep on the game. He scored 27 points, which was 2 off of his career high. Grabbed 6 rebounds, had 5 assists, also a steal. He and Moses Moody were really good in this one. I think something that really shows how great the Warriors were in this basketball game, and it's against San Antonio. I know San Antonio not really too eager to win a lot of basketball games at the moment, although before their 3-game losing streak, which is now a 4-game losing streak, and the 4 teams they have lost to, Detroit, Cleveland, Boston, and the Warriors, like 4 pretty darn good teams, especially of late, 4 of the hottest teams in the NBA since the trade deadline. Those are really hard games. Before that, they had won 5 of their previous 7, and all of those games without Wembanyama and without De'Aaron Fox. So, like, this is a team who, you know, they're nowhere near as good as they were when they were fully healthy, but it's not as if they're on the level of a Utah or of a Charlotte or of a Washington, although Washington is playing better of late. This isn't an absolutely terrible basketball team. They're not a good basketball team considering their injuries, but this isn't like the worst team in basketball, and they're not close to the worst team in basketball. And the way the Warriors came out and dominated from the jump was really, really impressive, and they really needed it. But one way I think that really illustrates just how good the Warriors were in this game was they did not need anything from Steph tonight. Steph hadn't even taken a field goal attempt in the first 4.5 minutes of this basketball game. Everybody else for the Warriors had scored. All other 4 starters had scored, and the Warriors had already built a 19-6 lead. Steph's first field goal attempt, which he made, was a mid-range jumper with 5.5 to go in the first quarter. So he went 6.5 minutes without even attempting a shot, and the Warriors had already built a double-digit lead. That's how good they were. Not that Steph hadn't scored yet, hadn't even attempted a shot. How long does Steph go 6.5 minutes on court without attempting a shot? And how often does those 6.5 minutes to begin a quarter, to begin a game? Like, that's so rare for Steph. So when you see that from the Warriors and from Steph, what that tells you is they're getting a lot of great shots elsewhere, and the others are making them. Because oftentimes what happens, and it's sometimes why Steph ends up with some super high volume shooting games, because no one else is making shots, and Steph then kind of feels like the responsibility is on his shoulders alone to put up shots and to try to score. It's what happened the last game in New Orleans when Steph returned. And Steph's stats in New Orleans: 23 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists. Like a good game for Steph standards, kind of a normal game, but a good game in his return from injury. But he took 21 shots, 7 for 21, 5 of 16. He was kind of a volume scorer in that one. Because oftentimes, and New Orleans was a great example, if he was playing in Atlanta and Miami, specifically in Miami, that would have been a perfect example. No one else is making shots, even wide open shots. So what is Steph going to do? Is Steph going to come down the floor and pass to Moody, who's 0 for 9 from deep? Or is he going to say, you know what, I'm going to try to cook this defender myself. I'm going to give him a couple of behind-the-back moves, a crossover and a step back, and I'm going to take what is undoubtedly a tough shot, but I'm Steph freaking Curry, so that's better than anything else we can get right now. Like, that's kind of where the rubber had met the road for the Warriors at times this year. I think back to that game in Sacramento. It was before the trade for Jimmy Butler, and a lot of people looked at that moment as a turning point. Let's see if I can find the exact game that it was. It was pre-February 6th. I think it was right here, January 22nd. Warriors lose by 6, but they had a lead and they blew it in the second half of that basketball game. There was a moment where the Warriors, they were down, I think it was 3 with like a minute and a half left, and they hadn't scored a lot in like the whole fourth quarter, and they were just treading water, trying to find buckets. And Steph dribbles the ball up, gets across half court, takes a really deep three. There was a double team that was beginning to come his way to get the ball out of his hands, but he took the shot before the double team could get there and contest his shot. But it was a tough, deep shot, and it misses. It almost went in, but it missed. And there were a lot of people who were debating whether that was the right decision, like pass to Wiggins, or pass to Moody, or pass to Podziemski, or whoever it was. Kaminga was injured and not available for that game. Or pass to Schroeder, who was still a Warrior at that point. Or take the shot. And I'm always like, a Steph shot is better than anything else you can get. I don't care if it's from half court and there's two hands in his face. It's Steph freaking Curry. Let him shoot. I'm okay with that. But that's the decision the Warriors were left with so often. It was, like on paper, this Moses Moody shot is probably a better shot than this deep Steph and Curry contested three. But really, who do you have more faith in? And a lot of times it had been, and I'm just throwing Moses Moody's name out there, it's the same for literally every other Warrior. An open Draymond three from the left wing or a contested deep Steph right wing three. What would you rather have? Just give me the Steph deep contested right wing three. Like it's just because it's Steph and no one else on the Warriors roster is an elite shooter. So that's where the Warriors have been for so much of this season. Not really when Jimmy Butler's been here, although the last couple of games have kind of been along those lines. But why tonight was so, freeing isn't the right word, but why it felt so good, why it was encouraging, was because the Warriors got to a situation where they did not have to make that decision. They didn't have to take the tough Steph shot because they were getting open shots from everywhere else, and the others were making them. So that was really encouraging to see. And as we go beyond what it meant for just this game, now the Warriors are entering the most important stretch of their season against quality basketball teams that are ahead of them in the standings. And if they want a chance to, solidify their spot outside of the play-in and in the top six in the West and to potentially climb higher, they need to win these games. And they're going to need the others, right? The Podziemskis of the world, the Moody's of the world, the Hields of the world. We'll see about Kaminga's right ankle. By the way, he left in the first half with right ankle soreness and did not return, was ruled out at halftime. Didn't really get an update from Steve Kerr. We'll play the full Steve Kerr where you will hear him talk about Kaminga in just a couple of minutes. But you're going to need the others to perform well. So why today was so impressive and important was now you go into that stretch in Memphis on Tuesday, in LA versus the Lakers on Thursday, then at home the next day versus Jokic and Denver, Houston on Sunday. Those 4 games are 4 games in 6 days, and then you have Phoenix next Tuesday. So you've got 4 really quality teams coming up, 4 teams that are above you in the standings. And then Phoenix, who is no slouch, has been playing better of late, although they had lost 2 games in a row. And as I take a look at their score, I think they're one of the other games still going on right now. They're taking on Houston, and oh man, they are getting run out of their own building. Houston is up 78-49 right now over Phoenix in Phoenix, early third quarter. The Rockets just put up 46 points on the Suns in the second quarter, and the Rockets are up by 39 points, or 29 points. So unless there's a crazy comeback for Phoenix, which I would not count on, they will have lost 3 games in a row, and they would fall further behind the Kings for 10th in the West, which also means my dream of the Rockets falling to 3 and Denver catching them is looking less and less likely. If Houston holds on, they would win their 49th game, and they would be a full 2 games ahead of Denver for the 2 seed in the Western Conference. We can talk more about all these permutations in the standings when we wrap things up in about a half hour here on Warriors Wrap Up. But I think one other thing before we get to Steve Kerr, and again, your thoughts always welcome. Plenty of time for your calls and your texts and your messages on YouTube. 888-957-9570, the number to call and text, and our YouTube chat, courtesy of First NorCal Credit Union, youtube.com/957thegame. I think what else was encouraging for the Warriors today and what we really needed to see, I don't know how you guys felt. I felt the first 6 minutes of this game were the most important, and the way it played out, it turned out to be true. But one way or another, like you were going to figure out and determine and be able to see like how much pride this Warrior team had based on the first 6 minutes of this game. They had slow start after slow start after slow start. Let me just read to you the first quarters on this road trip. In Atlanta last weekend, that was on, Saturday, right? In Atlanta last Saturday, 40-23 Hawks. So you get outscored by 17 in the first quarter in Atlanta. In Miami on Tuesday, 28-22 Miami. So you get outscored by 6. It only got uglier from there. The second quarter was incredibly ugly. The third quarter even worse. So outscored by 17, outscored by 6. New Orleans on Friday, 28-21. New Orleans outscored by 7. So outscored by 17 in Atlanta, outscored by 6 in Miami, outscored by 7 in New Orleans in those first quarters on this road trip. Then today in in San Antonio, you outscored the Spurs by 17 points, 44-27. And it was a 5-0 start. It was a 19-6 start. It was really, really good to see the Warriors begin the game, not just shooting the ball well, but also locking in defensively. They gave up 14 points to the New Orleans Pelicans, who are without Zion, without C.J. McCollum, without Trey Murphy, without DeJounte Murray, without Herbert Jones, right? All of those guys. And you gave up 14 points like over the course of the first 4 minutes of that basketball game. Ugly on both ends for the Warriors early in these basketball games. It was as pretty as it's been nearly all year for the Warriors early in this game and really for the entire game. So the first 6 minutes of this game, and you can extrapolate it out to the first 12 minutes, the first quarter as a whole, really important because the Warriors needed to get off to a good start. They've been talking about it for a while. Draymond Green said it after Atlanta. We got to come out ready to play. We can't have losses like this. Then the same exact thing happened in Miami. It happened again in New Orleans. Although they recovered and they still won that basketball game, it was not pretty. It did not happen again to the Warriors in this one tonight. All right. I want to get to a question that the 510 pose on our text line at 888-957-9570. The 510 asking about potential matchups and who you would rather face or see, and if there's a route to where maybe the play-in might be more intriguing to the Warriors. We'll get to that in a second. 510, I'm going to answer that question. Appreciate you tuning in, and I love the question. I want to throw it out to the rest of the audience as well. But first, let's hear from Coach Kerr. Warriors head coach Steve Kerr post-game in San Antonio after the Warriors' 148-106 win versus the Spurs to improve to 43-31 to take a full game advantage over the Clippers and to stay pace with Minnesota, who also won today. Warriors in 6th, a half game up on Minnesota, a full game up on the Clippers. We'll talk more about the standings a little bit later on as well. But right now, it's Steve Kerr after his team's dominant win in San Antonio. Here's the Warriors head coach Steve Kerr.
Yeah, I saw him at halftime and checked in on him. Such a bummer, just coming back, finding his rhythm, playing well. So hopefully it's nothing too serious.
What did you like the most about this performance?
I like the start of the game. We've been talking about getting off to better starts, and we got off to a great start. The offense was pretty crisp, and guys did a good job defensively. They missed some shots early that it's kind of the nature of the modern NBA game. Shots go in, shots don't, and we were due for a night like this to make some threes, and we haven't shot it well recently. So really good start, and that set the tone for the whole night.
Haven't had a wire-to-wire kind of dominant win like this in a while. Is this kind of game that develops some confidence knowing the stretch you guys are going into?
Yeah, and everybody feels good, and you get a night where nobody plays more than 25, 26 minutes. That's very helpful. Big game coming against Memphis, so we'll be well rested and in rhythm for that. And so big stretch coming.
Did you watch any of the Lakers-Memphis last night?
I did not.
Given that, like you said, big stretch, but all these games are meaningful, but games where you're playing teams directly in front of you, how consequential are those at this time of year?
Yeah, if if we can beat Memphis, we get the tiebreaker over them. That's huge. We're right there with the Clippers, and Lakers are only a couple ahead. We got them after, so it's quite a race going down the stretch. And we have a difficult schedule. Our last 8 games are pretty tough, so we're going to have to continue to play well. But tonight was a really good effort, and it's good momentum builder.
If Jonathan does have to miss time, we presume that would be more minutes for Guy, like we saw.
Yeah.
Just how steady has he been these last couple months?
He's our highest plus-minus guy on the year, and obviously he doesn't play a ton, but he plays a really important role. He comes in and he gets offensive boards, and he moves the ball, and he plays with great energy. He's a difference maker, and so I feel great about playing Guy if he has to play more with JK's absence, and he'll be ready to go.
Games like this can offer opportunities for your bench. What did you see from your bench tonight that impressed you?
Just a lot of solid play, a lot of good connection. Nobody, really had a monster game. Buddy had a big second half, but it was more just the overall team effort. 42 assists, 13 turnovers. Those are great numbers, and that's just everybody coming in off the bench and playing solidly.
You've had a relationship with Coach Pop. You've been able to see his mentorship up close, and now that his future is uncertain, have you been able to speak to him or have any conversations with him?
Yeah, we've stayed in touch. I went and saw him today, and he looks great, doing great, and he's one of the most important people in my life. So hoping that everything continues to progress, and but it was wonderful to see him.
The Spurs kind of have had a challenging season without Coach Pop. How difficult do you think it is for a young team to navigate without that type of leadership?
Yeah, it's Pop has basically been, the leader of the franchise for 26, 27 years, whatever it is. And that's a huge loss. I think their coaching staff with Mitch, they're doing a great job, and they have stayed competitive. Tonight was a one-off. This was not indicative of how they've been playing. So they're hanging tough. But with the injury to Wemby and Pop's absence, there's been a lot of adversity for them this year.
All right, there's Warriors head coach Steve Kerr post-game in San Antonio after his team's 148-106 win versus the Spurs. Warriors now 43-31. They score a season-high 148 points. They play 13, all 13 scored. 9 of the 13 made a three-pointer, and they're now a full game ahead of the Clippers, a half game ahead of Minnesota, who also won today. Minnesota hosting Detroit. Detroit without Cade Cunningham, and Minnesota wins 123-104. So the current 6, 7, 8 in the Western Conference looks like this. Warriors 6, a half game behind them for 7 is Minnesota. A half game behind Minnesota, which is now a full game behind the Warriors, is the Clippers in 8. And then you look even ahead of the 6, 7, 8. You go to the 5 spot. That's where Memphis is. Memphis, they are a game ahead of the Warriors. They're in the 5th spot, even ahead of Memphis. The Lakers are the 4. They're a game ahead of Memphis. So Lakers are 4. A game behind them is Memphis for 5. A game behind Memphis is the Warriors for 6. Then a half game is Minnesota. Another half game is the Clippers. 4 through 8 in the Western Conference, separated by just 3 games. There's only, 8 games left for the majority of these teams. 7 games left for Minnesota. That makes, gaining 2 games over the course of those games difficult. Gaining 3 very difficult. But there still could be a lot of movement 4 through 8, not necessarily 8 climbing to 4, but 4 could fall down to 6 potentially. 6 could climb up to 5. 7 could go up to 5. Like there's a lot of room for movement here from 4 through 8 in the Western Conference. I think Steve Kerr brought up something really important. He was asked, I believe, actually I can't recall exactly who asked the question, but he was asked what he liked most from his team today, and he just said the start of the game. Our offense was pretty crisp. He said the Spurs just missed a couple of shots, but also for the most part thought he liked the defense. But he liked the start. They've been talking about getting off to better starts. They needed it. It's what I was just talking about before I tossed it to Steve Kerr, and the Warriors responded in that way. They're going to need it against Memphis because Memphis, and I know they're going through their own stuff right now, They just fired Taylor Jenkins on Friday, kind of surprising the entire NBA world. They haven't been very good the last month plus. They have had some injuries, though. It's not like they've terribly underachieved given who they've been playing every game. But they fired their head coach. They've lost 2 in a row. They're 4-6 in their last 10. Still a surprise that they fired their coach, but they're going to be emotional. Memphis always gets up for the Warriors. That arena is always popping when the Warriors are in town. Draymond Green might be that fan base's least favorite player, especially in today's NBA, maybe in the history of that franchise, at least as long as they've been in Memphis. That's going to be a tough one. The Warriors are going to have to, at the very least, get off to a competitive start. Doesn't mean they have to lead by 15 like they did tonight in the blink of an eye, but you can't get down by double digits in the first quarter in Memphis. That is a recipe for disaster for a team that is playing for their postseason lives just like you are. You got to, at the very least, be competitive. Steve Kerr brought up something else that's very valuable and important to note going into that game. One, it's what we were touching on all show long so far. Everyone feels good. You got Podziemski, who gets kind of puts his slump behind him tonight. Same for Moses Moody. Buddy Hield was efficient and effective in this game. Draymond Green got going from deep a little bit in this one. So many players hit shots, and they should be feeling some confidence and feeling like they're in a rhythm going into that game. The other thing that's valuable, and I was getting at it because Memphis has the back-to-back. They play Boston tomorrow. They're at home, so it's a home back-to-back, but still not easy. Boston tomorrow, then the Warriors on Tuesday. That's the Memphis half of it, but from the Warriors half of it, you have tomorrow off, but you also didn't really have to push anybody at all today. The Warriors' leader in minutes played was Brandon Podziemski. So a second-year player played less than 27 minutes. That was the Warriors' leader in minutes. Let's see, I can count up. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Warrior players got 20 or more minutes in this game. Steph only played 25 minutes and 48 seconds. Draymond only played 21 minutes and 16 seconds. Jimmy Butler only played 23 minutes and 32 seconds. So the Warriors not only will have the advantage just in terms of days off, right? They don't play tomorrow. Memphis does. But the Warriors didn't have a normal full game today. Steph did not have to play at all in the fourth quarter. Neither did Draymond, and neither did Jimmy Butler. So the Warriors should be a little bit more rest than even you would expect a team coming off of just one day off. And Steph hasn't played a lot of late at all. He played Thursday, not this past Thursday, but the Thursday before, right? Over a week ago now versus Toronto, then did not play until the following Friday, which was a couple of days ago, and then played again tonight. So he doesn't have a lot of minutes under his belt over the last 10 days. He should be feeling pretty fresh. His pelvic contusion probably still bothering him a little bit, but in terms of exhaustion levels, he should feel pretty fresh. So that is good news for the Warriors going into that game. And Steve Kerr said it himself, a game behind Memphis, you win and you might be ahead of them, plus you lock up the tiebreaker. I was curious, so while Steve Kerr was going on, I did some research. If the Warriors lose that game, because right now the season series is 2-1 Warriors over the Grizzlies. 2-1 Warriors over the Grizzlies. If the Warriors lose to Memphis tomorrow, on Tuesday, the season series will be 2-2, and that's the last game of the season series. So who gets the tiebreaker then? The way the NBA tiebreaker scenario goes, it would eventually jump all the way down to conference one-loss percentage. So who won more games in conference play would be how a Warriors and Grizzlies tiebreaker would be determined, again, if the Grizzlies were to beat the Warriors on Tuesday. The tiebreaker might not come into play if the Grizzlies win, because if the Grizzlies win, they would gain a full game on the Warriors then, and the Warriors would have to gain 2 more games on the Grizzlies somewhere else to tie it up, which is possible, but given the lack of games left, seems unlikely. But if Memphis wins Tuesday and the Warriors still somehow happen to tie Memphis, the tiebreaker would go down to conference record. Right now, Memphis is 26-21. The Warriors are 24-20. You might think, well, Memphis has the advantage. they've won more games. They've won 2 more games, but they've also lost 1 more game. They have played 3 more conference games than the Warriors, which means the Warriors, if they win out in their conference, which I guess in this scenario it would not be because they would have a loss to Memphis to even up the season series, but they do have the ability to kind of control their own destiny because they have played so few conference games compared to Memphis. So the Warriors do have that going for them, but they would need to play really good down the stretch, which, to be fair, would kind of line up with the way that we would expect the Warriors to be able to catch Memphis. They would have to win a lot of basketball games in order to catch Memphis in the first place. All right, 888-957-9570. Let's go out to the phone lines. Chardol in Fremont is standing by. What's up, Chardol? How you doing?
Hey, Mark, it's great calling in the show. I love calling in to 95.7 The Game. I love everything you do covering the Warriors. I think you do a great job. Great win for the Warriors tonight. We blow out the Spurs 148-106. Moody and I don't know. So 2 players combined for 47. Moody and Podziemski combined for 47. That was phenomenal. When those 2 players are on the court, they're fun to watch. They work so well together. They lean on each other so well. I mean, it was a great win overall for the Warriors. And I hope they keep doing this because they have 8 games left in the season. So they have to try and win all 8 of those games if they want to, avoid the play-in tournament. Because there's a lot of hope for this team, but it's great calling in the show, and I'll see you next time.
Yeah, appreciate the call, Chardol, and thanks for the kind words. Yeah, Podziemski and Moody, they were really good in this game. Great to see them just, you hope that they got through their shooting slumps. I'll give you the numbers again. Podziemski in his previous 2 games, 3 for 13 from downtown. That's just like a couple of off games. That's not really a slump, but good to see him go 7 for 9 from deep. 3 for 13 in his previous 2. Moses Moody had been in a shooting slump. His previous 6 games for Moody, 6 for 32 from deep. That's less than 19% from downtown, and I don't know exactly how many of them were wide open, but of those 32 threes that he's attempted in his previous 6, like at least 20 of those have to be really open threes, like great looks, and for whatever reason they haven't been falling of late. He tonight goes 3 for 6 from downtown, including 3 for 4 in the third quarter. So Moses Moody was really good in this game as well, and you hope for those 2 specifically that kind of fixes their shooting woes, and now they feel a little bit more confident going in to the final stretch of the regular season, which, as Chardol mentioned, only 8 games left for the Warriors, who currently sit at 43-31. Before I get to that question that the 510 threw out, I did want to first get to Crashing the Boards, which is brought to you by Chilton Auto Body, the Bay Area leader in collision repair. Shout out to Chilton for sponsoring this segment, as always. Who was crashing the boards tonight for the Golden State Warriors? You know what? We haven't given this guy an honor of late because he has not played a ton of minutes of late. Let's go to Kevon Looney. Kevon Looney was crashing the boards in this one today. 7 rebounds to lead the way for the Warriors in only 13 minutes. That's a rebound in about every 2 minutes, but really quicker than that for Kevon Looney, which is kind of his normal pace. He is a rebounding machine. 7 boards to lead the way. Kevon Looney in 13 minutes and 6 seconds. Kevon Looney was good in this game as he had a little bit more run. It also was nice to see Trace Jackson-Davis get some run. He scored 8 points in his 9 minutes and 20 seconds. He attempted a 3 in the final couple of minutes because he tried to get in on the fun. Looney made a 3, his first of the season, 11th of his career. And he was thinking, well, maybe Trace could make one as well. He ended up missing it and wasn't that close, but I like the effort, Trace. Good to see a couple of those Warriors bigs who haven't been playing a ton of late get some run. But Kevon Looney gets the honor of crashing the boards, which, as always, is brought to you by Chilton Auto Body, the Bay Area leader in collision repair. Raymond on our YouTube chat says, Ray Allen Looney. Loon looking like Ray Allen, a great three-point shooter in this one. Nice to see Loon get a little bit right there. I did want to get to the question the 510 threw out. Let me find it again, and then I want to read the question to you. Let's see. Where is it? Here it is. The 510 says, if the Warriors fall to the play-in, there is no way Jimmy Butler will let them not make it into the playoffs. Would the Dubs have a better chance advancing versus OKC or Houston versus being the 6 and having to play the Lakers or the Nuggets? So essentially, 510, if I'm understanding your question correctly, you're saying, would it be better for the Warriors to be the 7 in the play-in if it means you win that first play-in game and get the Rockets, or would you rather be the 6 and have to play most likely the Nuggets, but potentially the Lakers? Let's simplify this and just say, let's assume the Nuggets are going to be the 3. Let's lock in the Rockets at the 2. And let's assume if you're the 6, you're playing Denver. And if you're the 7, you're playing Houston. So let's just lock that in for the sake of this exercise. Okay, so Houston's the 2. Denver's the 3. What would you rather do, Warrior fans? 888-957-9570. Would you rather be the 7 and have to win a play-in game to earn that 7 seed, and the play-in might be against Minnesota, might be against the Clippers, a couple of quality basketball teams. The Clippers have been red hot of late, although they lost today, but to one of the best teams in the league in Cleveland. Would you rather do that and have to win that play-in game in order to be the 7 and to play Houston, who I think we all think is a better matchup for the Warriors than either the Nuggets or the Lakers? But with that, and this is the part that we can't ignore, 510, with that, you also run the risk of losing that first play-in game, then having to beat a team like Dallas or Sacramento in the second play-in game just to be the 8 seed. And if you're the 8 seed, then you have to take on OKC in the first round. So that is a risk in and of itself. The other risk there is you might then lose that second play-in game and then be out of the postseason entirely, which has happened to the Warriors in the past. Reminder, they've been in the play-in twice, and they have not won a play-in game in their history. Doesn't mean they can't do it again, but we've been through this song and dance before, and it hasn't worked out well. So is that worth the risk to potentially get Houston, but knowing there's a chance you get OKC, and you also miss the postseason entirely, or would you just rather be the 6 and take on Denver? For me, I'd rather just be the 6 and take on Denver. And I think for me, the reason, there's a number of reasons. One, I don't think Denver is as scary as a lot of others do. I know we all point to that 9-game losing streak the Warriors have versus Denver. But if you give me a second, I can go back and find some of the numbers here. The Warriors, they have lost 9 in a row to Denver. I get it. But the Warriors have actually been really, really competitive in almost every single one of those basketball games. Let me see. I have it here in my notes. The Warriors in recent history versus Denver. Where did it go here? They have a 6-point loss. They have a 3-point loss. They have a 2-point loss, another 3-point loss. A 4-point loss. Like there's so many competitive losses versus Denver in that 9-game losing streak. And I get that they're all still losses, but you have been able to be competitive, and you've actually blown a couple. I know that doesn't necessarily scream confidence, but a few of those times you had Denver beat and you let it slip away. They did a good job down the stretch, but you also committed back-breaking mistakes that allowed Denver into that basketball game. I don't think Denver is as scary as that 9-game losing streak suggests. So one of the reasons why I would rather be the 6 and take on whoever is the 3, even if it is Denver, because I don't think Denver is this crazy, terrible matchup for the Warriors that others think it is. I also think the risk of playing Oklahoma City is far too scary for me. I think OKC is by far the best team in the NBA. The only reason we are not treating them like they are the historically good team that everything about them suggests is that they're relatively young and they don't have a ton of postseason experience, although I think they have more than we really give them credit for. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has been to the postseason 3 times before this year, including with the Clippers as a rookie when he helped give the Warriors trouble in the Kevin Durant era. Remember that first-round playoff series? It must have been in 2019 when the Clippers won 2 games in that series and forced 6 in the first round versus the KD Warriors. That was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as a rookie with the Clippers, and he was starting in that series as a rookie. Also went to the postseason with Chris Paul in OKC. Of course, last year with OKC, and now it will be this year with OKC. I am deathly afraid of Oklahoma City. I think every team in the West should feel that way. The Warriors are certainly in that group, so that's not worth the risk to me. And then the risk of missing the postseason entirely also scares me away. And then the other part of this is also that the week off that you guarantee yourself by being a top 6 seed in the Western Conference, that will be more beneficial to the Warriors than any other team in the West, considering the Warriors' age. A 37-year-old Steph, a 35-year-old Draymond, a 35-year-old Jimmy Butler. Give the Warriors a week off, and they are going to feel refreshed and rejuvenated and ready for a grind of a postseason. And now there is a chance that the Warriors might only have to play in one play-in game, and then they still get like 3 or 4 days off leading up to a postseason series. And yeah, that's possible. It's definitely possible. I just don't want to have to deal with that risk. The 510 chimes in again, and appreciate your question, 510. Although I think this is actually a different 510. It is, but love all the 510s equally. The 510 says, we also remember this year the Warriors being 2-1 versus Oklahoma City. And you're right. I'll just fire back at you, 510. Those 2 wins came without a fully healthy Chet Holmgren. One of the wins, Chet got hurt in the first half. The other one, he did not play in. But I hear you. I hear you. The Warriors are 2-1 versus OKC, but that was not a fully healthy OKC. I think this is an OKC team that we don't completely write off, but we just say, well, we're not that scared of them because they have a lack of postseason experience. If you look at the numbers and some of the more advanced analytics, the numbers suggest that this OKC team is one of the best teams in the history of basketball. And I am not just making that up. Now, you might say forget about the numbers. I'm, using the eye test, and the eye test thinks otherwise. I don't know. This is an amazing OKC basketball team, and I'm afraid. I'm not afraid to admit that I'm afraid. I think OKC is amazing, and the Warriors should want no part of that. And the good thing about being in the 3-6 part of the bracket, let's just say you're the 6 and Denver's the 3. If you are the 6 and Denver's the 3, and you happen to win that series, you then would take on the 2-7 winner. And if that's Houston, you get the matchup that you might have wanted. And if it's Minnesota or the Clippers, it might be tough. Houston's going to be tough. Denver's going to be tough. Like, you can't play the Warriors going to go all the way and win the finals without having to play a good team. Like, you're going to have to beat a good team at some point. So maybe this conversation is all for naught anyways. But as the 3 and the 6, you're also avoiding the OKC half of the bracket and also the Laker half of the bracket all the way to a potential Western semifinals matchup. So I think, long-winded answer, the 6 seed should be the Warriors' goal. I would even prefer it more than the 5 because I'd rather play Denver than the Lakers, and I also want to avoid the OKC half of the bracket as much as I possibly can. Okay, let's go out to the phones before we get on out of here tonight here on Warriors Wrap-Up. 888-957-9570. Rich is in Fremont. We'll have Rich bring us home. Rich, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing, sir? Thanks for taking my call. Really, this is a quality win, and I'll tell you why. Because we saw what happened in a couple of other games where the Warriors were the better team, but they let a team that's not playing well beat them. And this is what you want to see. You want to see a good Warriors team beat the team they're supposed to beat. They're supposed to beat San Antonio. That was a given. But really, at the end of the day, it's understanding that, hey, quality wins comes when everybody contributes. And in this game, everybody contribute. And, hey, hats off to Brandon Podziemski. Great game. I mean, he hit that 5th 3, and I thought, wow, okay, you basically showed up. You showed up today. Brandon Podziemski showed up in this game in a big way. I'm ecstatic about him. And really, it's a message to these guys that, hey, we squeak into the postseason in a 6. This is the type of basketball you're going to have to play. Everybody has to contribute. And so that's what I saw in this game. I like it. I like the way they responded. Great win. Thanks.
Yeah, appreciate the call, Rich. Yeah, I mean, they needed to respond. First things first, get a win. Like that's the most important thing for the Warriors. And then once you get the win, then you can think about the style points. Not necessarily style points. Like you don't have to do it in a crazy, exciting fashion, but just do it in a way that gives you confidence going forward, right? I think the Warriors did that with Podziemski and with Moody, with Jimmy Butler, who you got a little bit more from offensively, only 13 points, but he did most of his work early in this basketball game. He even made a three, was getting back to the free throw line a little bit more as well. There's a lot of players who are leaving this game feeling pretty confident. Buddy Hield, 19 points. How about this? Okay, the Warriors win a game and they won by 42, so you're going to have some crazy plus minuses. How many times has Buddy Hield led the Warriors in plus minus in a game? Buddy Hield was a plus 30 in this Warrior win in his 24 and a half minutes. He was 8 of 12 from the field. He was 3 for 6 from downtown. Impressive from Buddy Hield. There's a number of Warriors that feel really, really good about themselves going into the game against Memphis, which is coming up next for the Warriors. Man, this was just what the doctor ordered, which I think is exactly what Rich was getting at in this one. Warriors live here on 95.7 The Game. Just a minute or so left here with you. You're listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ FM and HD1 San Francisco, an Odyssey sports station, always live on the free Odyssey app, and now coming to you live from the Laughing Monk Studios. Let's take a look at the final scores. I don't know if this Rockets-Suns game has gone final just yet. Probably not. No, still 9 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. The Rockets are just absolutely dominating, though. It's 117-83. So let's just pretend that's a win for Houston and move on. Other important scores for the Warriors, with the Warriors in mind. The Clippers fall to the Cavs in Cleveland, 127-122. It's a big one there. The Timberwolves beat the Pistons, 123-104. And then, of course, the Warriors win 148-106. Those are the only 4 meaningful games to the Warriors across the West. And as a result, the Western standings look like this. I will count Houston as a win and a loss for Phoenix. So Houston is now 49-26. They're a full 2 games ahead of Denver for the 2 seed in the Western Conference. Let's jump now down to the 4 spot. The Lakers are the 4 seed currently at 45-29. 1 game behind them is Memphis at 5. And then 1 game behind Memphis are the Warriors, who are now the 6th seed at 43-31. A half game behind the Warriors are the Timberwolves, who are now the 7th seed. They jumped the Clippers. The T-Wolves are 43-32. They've played 1 more game than the Warriors and have that 1 extra loss, hence a half game behind the Warriors. Also worth keeping in mind, the Warriors have the tiebreaker over the Timberwolves no matter what happens the rest of the regular season, and then a half game behind the Timberwolves, which means a full game behind the Warriors, are the Clippers at 42-32. Of note there, the Clippers win a tiebreaker with the Warriors, even if the Warriors are to beat the Clippers in the final matchup of the regular season, which happens the final game of the regular season for both those teams. So the Warriors, a half game advantage on Minnesota, a full game advantage on the Clippers. As we take a look at the bottom of the play-in, the Mavericks are up to 9. They've won 2 games in a row as Anthony Davis has made his return. They're up to the 9 seed. The Kings are a half game behind them for the 10. And then if we consider Phoenix as a loss tonight, and they are very likely headed in that direction, they're now a game and a half behind the Kings for that 4th and final play-in spot. It's looking more difficult for Phoenix to get back up there, although anything can happen. But they are now a full game and a half behind the Kings for that 4th and final play-in spot, assuming that score does hold. And again, that score right now in Phoenix is 117-83 Houston. So very, very likely that score holds with about 9 minutes to go in regulation in Phoenix. But the Warriors have a chance to climb even higher, and that's because they have a game against Memphis coming up. And the Warriors are only a game behind Memphis. If the Warriors win in Memphis, they have the tiebreaker, and Memphis also plays Boston tomorrow. So Memphis, let's just play it out for a second. Memphis loses in Boston, or loses to Boston in Memphis tomorrow. the Warriors would only be a half game behind when they take on the Grizzlies on Tuesday. Then if the Warriors win that game in Memphis on Tuesday, they would pass the Grizzlies, be 5th in the Western Conference by a half game over Memphis, and would have the tiebreaker. So in these potential conversations, and this is only if the Warriors beat the Grizzlies in Memphis on Tuesday, where the Warriors would have the tiebreaker over Memphis. They already have the tiebreaker over Minnesota. They do not have the tiebreaker versus the Clippers. And in the case of any 3 or 4 team tiebreakers, I don't know about a 4-team tiebreaker, but definitely not in a 3-team tiebreaker. The Warriors would not win a 3-team tiebreaker. I don't think they win a 4-team tiebreaker if you include Memphis in there either. But I can double check that for you, and I will let you know on Tuesday if the Warriors do happen to beat the Grizzlies in that one on Tuesday. But a lot to look forward to. Warriors up next. Again, Memphis, Tuesday, 5 o'clock, which means 4 p.m. Warriors live here on 95.7 The Game. Then in LA versus the Lakers on Thursday. At home versus Denver the next day on Friday. At home again versus Houston on Sunday, a week from today. Then in Phoenix. Then at home versus San Antonio. Then in Portland. Then at home again versus the Clippers. That's the final 8 games of the year. Grizzlies, Lakers, Nuggets, Rockets, Suns, Spurs, Trailblazers, and Clippers. That's it. And then the play-in and/or the postseason for the Warriors. And that's it for this season. We shall see. Warriors have put themselves in a pretty decent spot to make the postseason. Today was a big day, a Clippers loss and a Warriors win, but it shows how quickly things can change. The Clippers entered today as the 6th seed. They're going to bed tonight as the 8th seed. Very similar story could come to the Warriors if they do not continue to take care of business. They're now 2-2 on this 6-game road trip, and maybe the most important game, not maybe, definitely the most important game of the trip is Tuesday in Memphis. A win, and the Warriors very well could be the 5 seed in the Western Conference come Tuesday night. All right, that'll do it for Warriors wrap-up tonight. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks to Steven Risotto, who is cutting up our Warrior game tonight. Shout out to my guy, Cam Williams, as always, behind the glass. My name is Mark Graney, signing off, and thanks as always to all of you listeners, for your callers, you texters, and you YouTubers. Appreciate all the interaction as always. I'll be back with you on Tuesday for Warriors and Grizzlies. Until then, have a good night. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time on 95.7 The Game.